This is the first time we're using this system. So
Stephanie, how are you? Oh, you're muted.
Good. How are you?
Good.
great. Hello, Stephanie. Can you hear us?
Yeah, Rich, how'd you get over there so fast?
Jim picked me up. I don't live very far from here.
You got 6:01.
So we'll start.
Perfect.
Is this being live streamed out?
It is not yet being live streamed.
Okay.
We are doing committees and council.
Why don't we start with just some introductions, go around the room. Everybody probably doesn't know everybody else, so why don't we just start with that, Rich? You want to start?
Sure. I'm Rich Barlow. I'm a visual artist. I also teach drawing and painting at Hartwick College.
My name is Andrew Attolo. I'm relatively new to Oneonta, 2 years now. Work for the Department of Health, and I'm excited to be here.
Carol Mandigo, and I work with LEAF as a prevention specialist, and also in the First Night Oneonta, and also I'm a wannabe mural artist.
Very talented.
I am a wannabe.
Yeah. If that's wannabe, then.
And I'm Kathy Spitzhoff, and I teach at SUNY Oneonta. I'm a graphic designer, and I teach graphic design and computer art, and I live up in Cherry Valley.
I'm Ian Austin. I manage the Oneonta Teen Center, and I am a photographer and sculpturist.
I'm Jim Maloney. I've been on the board of the Community Arts Network since 2009. I'm the current president.
Stephanie?
I'm Steph Rockneck. I'm a sculptor and a philosophy professor at Hartwick College.
Great. Well, first, I just want to say thank you to each of you for your willingness to give up your time, give up your talents, give up your abilities, and I think you're driven by a passion for making Oneonta a better place, and arts are an important part of quality of life here. It's an important part of our economy. It's an important part of who we are, and we want to make it better and better. So I just really do appreciate each of you were handpicked to be on this because you were, if I didn't know you personally, you were highly recommended to me by others as somebody who would bring a lot of value to this group. And I really appreciate your willingness to volunteer your time, your energy to doing this on behalf of the city. So thank you. Stephanie, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thanks.
I don't have a microphone in front of me, so that's working. So very, very much appreciated. This is going to be not an easy task because, first of all, we're starting something from scratch that we never did before. And whenever you do that, there's going to be some growing pains, and there's going to be some trying to figure it out, and there'll probably be some frustrations along the way. Each of you have the document that was used to create this commission. I do want to give credit, I thought she would be here, to our council member, Katie LaFarge. She is the one who championed the creation of this commission. So I give her credit for that. I thought she would be here tonight for it, but I'm thankful that she did champion it. She asked me a couple of years ago what I thought about the idea of creating a public arts commission. And I said, I think it's a great idea. I will completely support you in doing so, but you have to do the work. And she did. And so she really led the charge of bringing this to fruition. And I appreciate her doing that. I think I'm singing to the choir when I say that the arts are an important part of life here in the city of Oneonta. It's one of the things that make this a place that's desirable to live. And for many people, living in a place that does not have a vibrant arts community is not an option. I mean, that's something that people look for. It's an important quality of life. And we are lucky. We do have
a very vibrant artist community, not only in the city of Oneonta, but in the hills surrounding. Some artists prefer to be living right in the city, some prefer to be, out in the hills. But we're fortunate because we take advantage of all of it. And we have wonderful organizations here, Kano, Artisans Guild. We have a wealth of organizations that are supporting the arts, Fiddle Performing Arts Center. We have 2 colleges that both do and also helping develop the arts in this community. So, and one of our goals, I hope, is to get the colleges more involved in bringing the arts to the general public of the city. I met this morning with the new president of SUNY Oneonta, Dr. Alberto Arguelle. He is Cuban. He is a first-generation college graduate. I like him very much. I'm very impressed with him. I was on the search committee, so I had a hand in selecting him. And I'm very excited about him being here. I think he's going to be an excellent president of the college, and he's going to be an excellent member of the community. In his previous roles, he has been very, very proactive in bringing the colleges where he worked, integrating them into the community, and also just bringing the resources of the colleges to help make the community stronger. In recognition that the strength of the community depends upon the strength of the college, and the strength of the college depends upon the strength of the community. We need each other. Colleges would not exist if we have it from the community, and the community would not exist in a strong way if we don't have strong colleges. So I know we have representatives of both colleges here, which is a big plus as well. And I think that's going to help us. The general concept, I'm sure you all read through the document, which is a very, very brief outline, and I haven't read through it in the last day or two. But to simplify the charge, I think the first step is to create a master plan for public art in the city of Oneonta. What that master plan will be up to you. It will include things as locations. I believe there's discussion in there about creating an arts district in order to define the best location for arts, creating criteria for the type of arts to be displayed, and whatever else is deemed necessary to have a working plan for creating public art in the city. And then the next step was, once you have a master plan, you'll submit that to the council. The council will hopefully adopt that plan, approve it, and adopt it. And then you will have then complete control over the installation of art within that plan. That means that you'll set up a system for artists to apply to install art within the parameters of the plan, and you will review those applications, and you will approve them or disapprove them, or maybe negotiate something with the artist to make it work, so that it is consistent with the parameters that you've established in the plan that the council has adopted and approved. So your first task will be to actually do the hard work of starting from scratch, of creating a master plan. I have no idea how to do that. So it's not something that I've ever done. It's not something that we've ever done. I imagine that are many communities that we can research and Google and learn from who have done this. And now I'm sure it will be part of the effort. We don't have to completely reinvent the wheel. We have to customize it
be right to the city of Oneonta, but I'm sure a lot of research can be done over other communities that have created a master plan for public art. So how do we get there? Well, the first step, and I know this is a little awkward and that you don't even know each other and you're together for the first time, is you need a leader, you need a chair. And the way we work our boards and commissions is that they elect their own chair. A vice chair is optional. You can elect a chair and a vice chair, or you can just elect a chair. So, you know, I don't know how to go about this. That isn't awkward, but you know, if somebody wants to point a finger at somebody else and nominate them as the chair, you can just state that you want to nominate somebody as the chair, and then if there's support for that person, they could be elected as the chair. I don't know how to go about it. That isn't awkward. So, and the other thing is, if somebody feels that they have the skills to lead this, don't be shy about just raising your hand and say, "I'll give it a try." That's okay too. So we'll start there. Does anybody want to either just raise a hand and say, "Look, I think I can give this a try"? Anybody? Don't be shy.
I think everyone here is probably has the skills to do it. The question would more be who has the time and the desire to do it. So maybe we should just go down the line and people can say
Yeah,
how
or
they
if somebody
feel
wants to
about taking that on, and that
Suggest
would give us
somebody
some
else, you can do that-
information.
You can do that as well. I don't know how else to go about it. You know, usually every year or each of our board commissions elects a chair. The position is for 1 year. So every year every board commission re-elects or elects a new chair every year. So it's a 1-year position. And actually, in this case, we're almost at the end of the year, and our year is January 1st. So whoever steps up to do it now, at the end of the year, the commission will either will hold an election again and re-elect or elect a new chair. So it can be an interim spot, and if somebody doesn't have the time or doesn't want to continue, wants to just take it on for the next 3 months or so, 4 months, whatever we have left in this year, and then hand it off first of the year. That's doable as well. And Stephanie, you're eligible also, even though you're on television.
Darn.
So, thoughts?
Well, I have one thought, which is I'm not available bandwidth wise to do that. I wonder if it might make sense to have people remove themselves from contention if they definitely don't think they can. I mean, I've just become co-chair of a department at the college, and it's a big department with a lot of responsibility. I don't think I can do both, and I've already stepped down as chair of exhibitions at Kano as a result of that. And so it seems like it would be a little foolish to take that on to me. I'm happy to be part of the commission, but I
appreciate you just doing what you can.
and I assume there may be other people in the room who feel that way. So maybe one way of, I don't know, narrowing the field is if there's anyone who simply can't, if there's a way to say that.
Well,
I feel like maybe I should remove myself because this is my first venture into an Oneonta activity. So I'd like to kind of get to know the terrain, and I'm also stepping up to be chair of my department in January for 1 semester. So.
Great. Anybody else feel they need to remove themselves from consideration?
Yeah, same here. I'm also chair of my department. So I'd have to
Well,
step.
we're really fortunate to have, people who are so, have leadership positions in the community, in the arts. So we're really fortunate for that. Anybody else feel they need to remove themselves? Anybody feel that they want to just say, I'll give it a try for 3 or 4 months?
We have boards and
I think you just
commissions.
raise your hand.
Can I hear a mumble? Can I hear a mumble over there, Ian?
I said, stop looking.
We have boards and commissions that have co-chairs.
Yeah, I mean, we can make it co-chairs as well. We can have a chair and vice chair and co-chair situations. That's all. Those will be for 3-4 months just to get started.
I mean, I'm finding myself in a transitionary period of, you know, having worked in media and suddenly not working in media, and I'm very much in a position where I could find people to get information from, interview them, talk to them, so that sort of gathering. But I'm also very much used to observing and reporting and collecting information. You know, when I think of a chairperson, you know, especially someone who's going to come and, you know, present stuff to you and the council, I'm going to think of people who I have personally witnessed speaking in front of you and doing so very well. I recognize a couple of you, and I know a couple of you quite well. You know, which is, you know, given that, I point my finger towards Carol or Jim, because I have seen them. Well, I've seen them both in action, and you know, when they stand up, I think that they're very persuasive, and I think that people listen and they're clear. You know, this is definitely new ground for me, so you know, I would feel a little comfortable sort of observing it first and seeing the ropes a little more before I stepped into the top position of anything.
And I'm a little curious how Andrew feels about doing something like that.
Well, in terms of being the chair, it's definitely not something I've had experience with. I'm not fully sure what it entails. You know, so I'm sort of ignorant to the position itself. That being said, you know, if necessary, I could you know, help maybe with the co-chair, but in terms of taking the full-on role, I'm doubtful in my abilities when it comes to that. You know, in terms of the role that the chair would play, could you kind of go a little more into the responsibilities?
I think the most important thing over the next 3 months, 4 months, would be to facilitate the group working towards the goal of how we're going to put together a master plan. I think what we really need is somebody who can serve as a facilitator. You know, say that this is where we have to get to, help each person find their role in it, set steps along the way, objectives along the way, in order to get to the objective. Deadline for creation of that. As long as it takes, of course, forever. But, it takes 3 months, it takes 3 months, it takes a year, it takes a year. We don't, you know, we have to set a deadline.
So that being the case, I think someone who has at least some rapport with the most people here is going to do best at that job in terms of facilitating communication and organization. Just having knowing people helps go a long way.
I'm planning on retiring from my job, which I'm only part-time in January. So I'm willing to do it because I would have more time in my life for something like this. And I've also been so excited about Oneonta becoming a mecca for the arts. There's so much opportunities for public art with our wonderful student artists and local artists. But Jim is you know, probably a lot more organized than I am. And with
I find that hard to believe.
running the, you know, he's really probably the best candidate.
Well, that sounds like a nomination to me for at least the duration of 2021.
Sounds like a railroad, sure. You know what, I will happily like start the process of getting this thing rolling. As long as I can count on everybody for help. Especially in trying to figure out the master plan, or just get started on the road to the master plan.
So just for the record, Carol was nominated. Jim, we need somebody to second,
I second.
and all in favor of Jim serving as the chair for the remainder of 2021, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Congratulations, Jim. And
It
thank
sounds
you.
like we need to teach Ian the ropes.
Yes, I'm gonna be teaching everybody the ropes.
Thank you. So with that, I turn the meeting over to Maura.
Okay. I guess the next thing on organizational is discussion of the charge of the commission. Everyone's got a copy of the ordinance. I would suggest take a week, read this over, figure out how we are going to become some arbiter of what should be public art. When this was actually first brought up a couple of years ago in community conversations, and my big worry was it has become a way to censor art. So probably the first thing to do is start researching a master plan.
She disconnected.
Disconnected.
Oh,
Accidentally or intentionally?
That I don't know.
and oh, here she comes. Hi, Stephanie.
Now she can hear you.
She's muted. You're muted.
Sorry, my internet's been having issues all day.
Okay. Well, if you missed it, I got railroaded into being in charge for the next 3 months.
Yay.
Yeah. And my suggestion is that we start looking at other small communities' master plans for arts commissions. And we have everyone's email address. We'll start a Google group or something and start sending each other's ideas. And basically throw things at a wall and see what sticks and see what works for Oneonta.
What exactly is a master plan? I mean, what does that entail?
That's
I mean,
what we're
I
going to
guess that's part of the
research.
question, right?
Yeah, that's part of the question.
Because I can tell you right away, we're going to need money.
Lots and lots of money.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought money up, Stephanie, because, what I recall from reading through the original ordinance that established this, and I'm looking at you on the screen, but you're probably seeing the back of my head.
That's okay. Okay, now I see you.
What I recall is that some of the matters will be possibly establishing a district in which public art should be displayed, establishing a process for which artists can apply to have their art displayed, installed, a process for approving it, and also going to the council as advocates. Really, our boards and commissions, for the most parts, are champions, advocates for what they do and what they're passionate about. And your role is to go to the council and say, this is our vision, this is what we need to accomplish it, and that includes money. So we typically have, and we have not appointed someone yet, we typically have a liaison, one of the council to each of our boards. And one of the council members, I appoint one of the council members to be a liaison to the board. I have not done that yet, and that's only, that's my fault. It just fell through the cracks, and that's why they're not here. I will do that in the coming weeks. One of the council members will attend all of your meetings and will make sure that there's communication in both directions. They will keep you informed of anything that the council is saying or doing relating to your work, and keep the council informed of where you are going and what you are doing. But by all means, one of your roles will be to advocate for what is needed to have a more vibrant display of public art in this community. And of course, that includes the need for money. And and it is expected that you will let the council know that these are the funds that are needed. You, as a council, put this commission together. You, as a council, said you believe in this. You, as a council, have said that you value public art. Now, we need to tell you what you need to provide to allow us to make that happen.
Also, traditionally, public art often is thought of as, permanent art pieces. It doesn't have to be permanent. There could be temporary installations, but is that something that's going to be in our purview as well?
It's completely up to you.
Okay.
You will establish those parameters.
Oh, I think that's so important because we have so many young artists around and we have such wonderful parks and, places to put temporary installations. And I mean, right now we're working on the Festival of Lights for this winter and, it would be wonderful to have student artwork and light up things throughout the park. And it would be great if this commission could advocate for stuff like that and help organize it.
One of the interesting things how this commission was established is that you draw up the master plan that pretty much lays out the parameters for the installation of art, where they will be, how the artists will be selected, what criteria will be used in selecting art and approving applications for art. And once the council approves that plan with those parameters, then the authority is yours to move forward within the parameters of that plan. So you at that time will have the full authority to oversee an application process, to select the artists, to if an artist don't meet the criteria that have been established, you would deny the application or possibly negotiate with the artist over maybe what issues need to be worked on to make it fall within the criteria. Honestly,
We may need a code officer for a number of these projects if it involves, if it's in the public. Will we be able to draw upon his or her resources at will?
Absolutely. The code, our code officer is Stephen Yearley. He's young, he's energetic, he's innovative, he's very interested in the aesthetics of the city. He would be excited to work with you, and he would be available to you. And thanks for pointing that out, Stephanie. That is an important thing that I didn't think to mention. So thank you for pointing that out.
One thing I'm wondering about, because there are artists here that are incredible.
I'm gonna sit over here because I feel it's kind of strange. I'm looking at Stephanie in the screen, but she's seeing the back of my head. So this way I can.
Am I on a giant, like a Wizard of Oz screen? That's really frightening.
This is the first time we've used this system, so this is all this is new territory for us.
With the incredible artists and people like Ian who do installation type stuff, would that be a conflict of interest for someone on the commission to propose projects or have their students participate in projects that?
I would think it's a conflict of interest for me or Steph to submit or propose for something.
Right.
I don't really think it would be to encourage our students to apply. Personally, I mean,
it would be.
I could recuse myself.
Let's say that.
One was.
Let's say Stephanie had a concept to create a piece of art to be displayed downtown. It would not be a conflict of interest for her to suggest that and apply. What would be a conflict of interest for her to vote on approving it?
Okay,
Right.
So all she would have to do is recuse herself from the approval process. But the fact that a member of the commission would want to display their art is not a conflict. It's just because this commission will approve it, you just recuse yourself and say, I'm not going to be part of the approval process. Allow
Do
the
we have
rest
to
of the-
operate on a quorum system?
Yes.
So if more than one of the people on the commission submit and they recuse themselves, can we possibly lose a quorum?
Well, you have 7 people. You need 4 people to approve anything. No matter how many show up or how many are available to vote, you need 4 people.
Yes.
So if one person recuses himself, you still have the 6 people. And all you need is 4 to approve something.
I guess I feel like I would be wary of an apparent conflict of interest. I take your point that that would be okay. But, you know, with a sort of serving the public and in the public eye, you know, if the newspaper article is, you know, commissioner gets the public art gig, you know, I think that looks bad. I mean, I think if it's the best possible proposal and if it's got really good reasons to go forward, but I am wary of the kind
I
of,
think that's
storm
a
that would lead
decision
to.
for each person to make individually.
I would just think that that kind of thing could lead to a lack of public confidence in the idea of spending money on public art. And
Yeah.
if we're gonna have to chase funds, I think you want people to buy into the idea and not think that it's a self-serving thing that a bunch of artists came up with.
I hear that, Rich. From a legal standpoint, you can do it.
And I hear that too. I'm
From
just,
from
I'm
an optics
speaking-
standpoint,
yeah.
I would leave that up to each individual.
Okay.
to make
And
that
I
determination.
guess I just feel like as a committee, I would hope any of the artists on the commission would only propose something if it really felt like the best
You know,
correct fit, you know, that. and
Because
think
we're
about how it
because we're
works.
such a small community, these things pop up all the time.
Yeah.
You know, we have a planning commission that has to approve anybody who wants to put an addition on their house or build something. And from time to time, there's a member of the planning commission who wants to build something.
Sure.
So, they just recuse themselves.
But I would bet that from time to time, there's a flare up of public sentiment attached to those things too.
As long as they recuse themselves, we really have not had
Okay.
that. You know, it happens with council members too. We have council members who have local businesses.
Right.
At times, they have to remove themselves from consideration. So in a small community, conflicts of interest arise.
Sure.
They can't be avoided. As long as somebody declares that there's a conflict and recuses themselves from it, it's not a problem. But I also completely respect anybody not wanting to feel that they're being viewed as taking advantage of the system, and completely respect that as well.
And as I said, I mean, I think if the public loses confidence in the mission of the commission, then that undermines our ability to go forward after that.
I hear you. By the way, Greg Mattice is our newly appointed city administrator. He's been the city engineer for how many years, Greg?
About 10 years total, 11 years now. So
And was just selected as our new city administrator. So he will also he will be really your connection with the staff. So, for example, Stephanie brought up they feel it would be beneficial for them to have the involvement of the code enforcement officer at times, which makes a lot of sense. So any requests that you have for staff involvement would go through Greg. Greg's role is to oversee the staffing of the city. So he would be your conduit, your connection for staffing. He will be available. I mean, he will attend the meetings if he can. He will certainly, if you want him, you can communicate through Kerry. Kerry will be really your communication person. Kerry Harrington's the city clerk. She will be sending out the agendas to you. She'll be sending out the materials. She'll be sending out the announcements of meetings, if it's cancellations, whatever it may be. She'll be really your point person for communication. And if you want any staff support, whether it's code enforcement or whoever else it may be, just let Carrie know. She'll let Greg know and make sure that he's in communication with you.
So the master plan. Where do we start with that? Seems
Yeah.
like none of us really have a good idea of where to even begin.
Well, there is a master plan that Greg showed us all for Neowa Park, which it's a park plan, but it's a model about how to, it's basically a map showing locations for potential projects like a water park or splash park and, you know, sidewalks. And I think the first order of business might be to just identify locations that might be good for public art and maybe some projects, mosaics or sculpture that could potentially go in there, or temporary installations, and just come up with what Greg, like, it's almost like a wish list, but something more solid that you're working toward.
Right, we could divide that into two groups, temporary and permanent.
Right.
And, you know, so for temporary, we'd have to, you know, cite all the venues, right? And permanent, we'd have to find the locations, but I guess that, you know, locations would be temporary as well. And then the application process, right? Do we want to do what's called a request? I guess it would vary too, depending on the project. So you can do a request for proposals, which is basically asking artists to work for free, but it's the safest for us in the city. And that's when an artist presents an idea and you judge something, and it could be completely anonymous, and you judge it based on the idea. Or it could be a request for qualifications where you ask an artist to present all of their qualifications, and that's not anonymous. And then you select a pool of artists based on their qualifications. So we should probably decide, you know, do we want to have, you know, what kind of application process we want, and maybe we don't want it set in stone. Maybe that would vary depending on, you know, the location, what we decide is available first.
Stephanie, have you applied for public art projects?
Yeah, multiple.
Could you take a look at those places you applied and see if the Public Art Commission has a master plan? We're developing this from the ground up. So, well,
No,
these
I
are
mean,
great ideas
I did a project in Boston and the Boston Art Commission. I don't know that they have, I mean, it's not something that I would have access to as an artist. It would be an internal document.
Well, all those internal documents for cities and municipalities are public documents. So they probably have them on their webpage somewhere.
I don't know that Boston or the Smithsonian would be helpful for us. You said small town, right? So
Well, I think
I'm just sharing with you the knowledge of what it takes to go through this process.
right. But
And
what we
you
need
money.
is we have to figure out what we have to do to run this process.
So we need money. We're gonna have to be able to fund these things. And so Boston, for instance, had a variety of funds that artists could apply to fund it, or they could be self-funded. So money is one big category. You need a code officer that's involved in everything to make sure that these are viable and nothing is there's no violations. And you need an application process, which could vary, right? It could vary. And those are the two main, sorry, my cat was climbing the catio. Those are the two main ways that you apply for a project, right? It's an RFP, request for proposal, or an RFQ, a request for qualifications. And, if you do a request for qualification, then you could do a request for proposal, but then you're going to usually pay someone, I don't know, it depends on what your budget is, $1,000 or a couple $1,000 to come up with a proposal, and then say 5 proposals, and then you pick from that.
Are we limited to city property or like could our
We contract with local property
include
owners.
foothills or, you know,
No, I
Some-
mean, no, I don't think it has to be city property, within the city, yes, but I think if you can make an arrangement, an agreement with somebody who has private property, whether it's a privately owned individual or or not-for-profit organization or even a business, I don't see a problem with that.
This ordinance says all murals that do not constitute a sign, blah, blah, and are located on premises that do not have a 1 or 2 family dwelling. So there is a limitation.
Okay.
And that's just the one thing I read earlier. There may be others in there, but there is apparently in here some limitation.
Okay.
I guess I feel like I would, just because I tend to think abstractly perhaps, I feel like figuring out the proposal process is a bit further down the road than where I would start, because I feel like I guess the 2 questions I have, and the one is very broad, is what do we think the point of public art is? And I feel like maybe as a commission, if we had an idea about that, I'm not saying there isn't a point, I'm just saying that might guide how we decide what kind of calls for proposals we want. And then, you know, I've heard the phrase arts district a few times, and that suggests that there's some kind of density we're going for, or some sort of path or, you know, placement, and that we aren't just open to anything anywhere within the city, but rather that, you know, maybe it is Neoliberal Park where we do something, or maybe Huntington Library Park, because that's right across from the artist lofts. Maybe that's a place of density. It feels to me like before thinking about the process of getting the proposals, we might want to think of why do we want this, and in what kind of way do we want this?
But I don't think we're overlords here. I mean, generally the way these things work is like, say the Huntington Library says that they want some public art and they have an idea of what they think that that's going to do. And then we assist them with the process. We don't, from what I understand, the Public Arts Commissions doesn't come up with, you know, our vision of what art should be for the city. We
So
work
when
with,
we say that there's an arts district, is that brought to us by other people, or are we in charge of thinking about what we mean by the idea of an arts district, I guess? Because I agree, yeah, the Huntington Library could come to us and say, we would like you to run this process, but, you know, can anyone do that? Is there a limitation to it?
Yeah, these are really good questions, and I don't know who wrote up the document that you have in front of you, but I think what's important is to everybody take some time to read through that. And if there is general consensus that there are things in that document need to be changed because they just don't work, or they're not optimal, nothing is carved in stone. I mean, everything can be changed. I mean, if this commission comes to the council and says, you know, we reviewed the document for the following reasons, we think the following changes should be made. I mean, there's a process for the council to do it. The council will have to go through a process to make the change, but it can be done. So that document was written up, you know, in a bit of a vacuum. So by no means feel 100% constricted by it if it doesn't make sense. If there's a better way to do it, and the count and this group feels there's consensus that there's a better way to do it, just let us know. Spell out the changes. You know, don't go to the council and say, we want you to think about some changes, because they're not experts on this, then they won't come up with changes that make any more sense.
I mean, I guess the reason I'm taking the broader view is sentences like the commission will create a strategic arts plan by evaluating spaces and reviewing proposals. I take Steph's point that we could be just the commission that the proposals come to, but this says we are developing a strategic plan. And maybe we drop that.
Your plan could be as broad as what Stephanie is proposing.
So our plan could be, we don't do anything, you come to us, and then we work from there.
Your plan could be whatever you want it to be. The council will have to approve it, I think one of the reasons it was written the way it is that the council will be granting you authority to make actual decisions as to accepting applications for art, denying them, deciding what gets installed or not. And I believe that they wrote it the way they did, or accepted it the way they did, was because they wanted to be able to approve the broad parameters of the plan on which you will base your decisions. I think they're maybe probably a little uncomfortable in saying that you can just make decisions as you see fit without parameters that they've already approved. So I think they want you to come up with a plan that they approve so that they know your decisions have been made within those parameters. But what that plan looks like, I think it can be anything. Whatever you feel is best, and then you bring that to the council, and if they accept it, they accept it. If they don't accept it, then there'll be discussion back and forth over what their concerns are and reaching an agreement as to
So
what
since
they can live with.
we're not the first city in this country or other countries to have a public arts commission, why don't we take a couple of weeks to do some research on what other small cities do? And we can borrow, if they have it, a master plan. We can adapt that to the spaces that we have for public art, or the spaces that we desire for public art, and then send that to council for approval. And once they approve the bones of how we're going to identify spaces, the kind of art we're looking for, how we will jury that art if we decide to jury it, and then we can start discussing, like, you know, the nitty gritty of how to apply and how people can apply and how we approve it. What we really have to do over the next 3 months, I think, is to create a plan, to spell it out so council can say, that's great, we'll approve it, go do your work. Otherwise, we're splashing around in the dark, and hopefully we find something nice that we can send to the council and they can approve it or not. But if we have a plan to follow, like an outline to follow, anytime someone wants to do it, or we ask for submissions or do a national call for artists, then it's a process that we've already established. We're not just making it up every time we do it. Well, I mean, I just went on the internet and I found a whole bunch of public art master plans from other cities. I'm sure there's something out there that we can adapt for Oneonta, rather than trying to reinvent something.
Sounds good.
So if everyone agrees with that, why don't we all start doing some research? We'll set up a group email and just trade information for the next couple of weeks until we find something that fits, or find something that we can make fit. Everyone's nodding their head, so
Yes.
I'm assuming that's all in agreement.
Yes.
Great.
Will we be able to amend the master plan as?
We're writing a master plan.
Right, but I mean,
Can we
as
amend the
time
ordinance
goes on,
down
if
the
say, for example,
Oh, sure.
The council will have to approve.
okay,
So
But should we, while doing this, also be looking at this ordinance and seeing where we have differences of opinion about what's been written up here as well?
Sure.
This is also open
sure.
for,
it's open for change. If we're,
and I just haven't read it that closely.
the council would have to approve any changes to it.
Yeah.
There's a bit of a process to go through in changing an ordinance. So they'll have to have a public hearing before they can change it,
I'm just thinking,
but it's
if,
changed, but it can be changed.
if we find another master plan somewhere that seems like a really good fit for us, but we look at the ordinance and see that there's a conflict with something that was set out here, we would have to massage those
You
things.
can certainly recommend changes to it. Ultimately, the council is the final authority. They would have to approve any changes, but they can change it whatever they want to change, and you advocate. Your job is to advocate as the people who've been appointed or have expertise. You advocate for what you think is needed and what you think is best. And if you think that what's written up is not best, advocate for change. And Stephanie said you're going to need money. You know, you're going to have to advocate for money. The council controls the purse string.
How much money does council have? I mean, not just from the city, but
They have about $20 million.
They do?
you know.
Not for the Public Arts Commission.
You know, how much is available right now for public art is zero, but, you know, everything's about priorities. I mean,
Wow.
you have to make your case. You make your case for it and try to sell it. And of course you compete with, everything else. You know, Greg is asking money for roads and, you know, and people are asking money for, parks, and people are asking money for, you know, everything, but, recreation.
So when we look,
But it's the council makes the final decision on priorities.
then maybe we want, when we look at these master plans, we want to see if they have any sort of public art fund that's dedicated that we could somehow create.
Realistically, you're gonna probably have to start small. You know, I don't think that the council is gonna be amenable to a large sum of money right off the bat. They'll probably want to see how it plays out and results and build.
Can you
So-
define a small amount of money?
Honestly, I don't know. I really don't know.
I mean, I've done,
I have no idea what's needed here, and I don't think anybody gave any thought to this, honestly, when creating this. Do you, Greg? I mean, I don't think anybody gave.
Something that I've read a little bit about in a lot of these places that already have established art programs is a percent fund, where it's typically around 1% of every capital project goes to a public arts fund. So anytime, you know, you have that project, you have a small trickle of money going to public arts. Now, we don't need to do 1%, we could do 0.5% if the council wants to do a smaller amount, but that at least gives us some sort of steady stream of money. And then we can
Interesting
supplement it with
concept.
grants and what else.
Interesting concept.
And there are grants available, and a lot of projects
Yeah.
don't take a lot of money, you know, especially student, you know, elementary, high school, college student projects could be very big and impressive.
You know, I'll be
Not a
honest with
lot
you,
of
the
funds.
discussion of money never came up amongst the council members when they passed this. So I don't know what they were thinking.
artists are used to that.
But the percent for art is very popular in a lot of places.
Often it's tied
Well-
to the building that the percent comes from, so that
Yeah.
that building must have some public art in it or on its grounds. I don't see any reason why it couldn't be tied to the, you know, 10 square blocks of downtown, you know.
Even if it's tied to the building, we're at least getting funding for a project.
Yeah, although
we're
that cuts
interested
into
about.
whether you can do sort of a Neo Park sort of thing. It would be often in the lobby space of a new building, and we don't have so many new buildings.
Yeah.
Didn't the DRI have a dedicated portion for public art?
No, actually, it was one of the items that was proposed as part of the DRI. But when, the interesting thing about the DRI was the state said, we're gonna give you $10 million. We want you to propose $14 million worth of projects. So we can pick and choose the $10 million you get. And public art, we did ask for, put in some money for public art, and it wasn't one of the ones that they selected. So, you know, the state always has to do a little bit of micromanaging. You know, they never just give you money without feeling that they want to have some control over it. So they said, no, you have to give us $14 million worth of projects. You can't just give us $10 million worth of projects. And we'll tell you which ones that add up to $10 million you can have.
So a good starting block too, that I just want to get people's opinion is what our collective goal is going to be. I think in the ordinance here, you know, it mentions the economy and quality of life. Those are two things coming into this that I feel strongly about. I think public art is great for small businesses and should be used to help grow and sustain Oneonta's downtown, along with just the quality of life of its residents. With that being said, and going into what Stephanie and Rich were talking about with controlling where the art is and actually what it is, I think that is important to an extent to create a walking path that encourages, groups of people from outside the city to come and start at point A, go to point B, with stopping at shops in between. So we do need to have some sort of control on where it goes, what it is. I'm not trying to stifle art here, but with a concrete goal of economy and quality of life, these are some of the things that will need to be addressed.
Right, you're thinking along the lines of Ithaca's solar system.
No, I'm actually not sure what that is.
Okay, they have, it's a public art thing where they have a solar system set up around downtown, where each planet is represented in distance from
Oh,
a center sun. So as you're going to the different parts, you're walking through different parts of town.
yeah, so it's something exactly like that.
Okay.
And a lot of things that are popular in a lot of other places is mural tours. Once
Yeah,
you get enough in
Philadelphia.
there, people love going, taking
Right.
pictures in front, posting on Instagram.
Yeah.
And this is where quality also comes in. We
What's the
want
those-
to be sure that the quality is going to be something people want to see.
Yes.
So this goes back to the application process.
Right, I
So-
mean, there does need to be some gatekeeping, especially if it is tying into the sort of tourist economy and the vision of the city that want it to be solid.
Sorry, I don't know all your names, but so what you were just saying, the gentleman in the blue shirt and the black mask.
Andrew,
Andrew, so for that, what you do is you would come up with a concept that says, the city of Oneonta is looking for artists, architects to enhance the economy. We have to be a little bit more specific than that. And then they give you their proposals, right? We don't come up with a proposal of like a sidewalk or a solar system, whatever. We let their creativity guide the process. So we just come up, if we're as, city, members of the city, we decide that there's something that the city needs. Right? We come up with the broadest possible terms to allow for the most creativity possible. And then they could come up with the craziest things that we hadn't thought of. And that's how it works.
Yeah, no, I like that. Would we have some sort of control? We'd have to say, all right, here's the space you have to work with. So we got
Yeah.
permission for
Yeah.
this wall, and here
Yes.
you go, have
well,
Yes.
if our vision was we want to move people through the city by means of a guided tour to all the public art, we could sort of plan out roughly where is it Neola Park into downtown into Huntington Park is where we would sort of like things to go, and then open up to proposals with the idea that this is going to be part of a path, or
Yeah, just
connect to
getting
other
people
art.
to moving throughout downtown.
My guess is if budget is and will be an issue, we won't program an entire path or tour in 1 year. It would be rather every
Yes.
year we put one more stop on that and eventually
Well,
build.
that's
up.
why I want to just have a more of a concrete goal of what we're working towards. I mean, obviously, this isn't going to happen overnight, but just a collective idea of where we're going with this.
In some ways, this brings us back to the original idea of finding a map or creating the spaces, deciding on the spaces. And then the request would be for site-specific art. And you would be providing, information about the spaces that are available. And then the artist can start thinking about what they could do for that individual space or more than one,
So we could look at a map and think about what would be a good path or what kind of buildings are available. Again, at the moment within the ordinance, there's certain property that's not available. Single and two family homes, property owned by the county or the state or another public authority other than the city is out of bounds. So we can't just start circling things on the map.
but that would give us something very concrete to start with,
Yes,
So
I
that
agree.
then we could start requesting proposals for a specific thing.
And then I agree with Steph that should be as open as possible to the creativity of whoever submits a proposal
Fine.
within that parameter of these are the places you have to work with.
Greg, could we get a map of downtown
Yeah.
with all of the, well, I mean, the 1 and 2 family homes are easy to black out, but anything that's county or state property.
Yeah, I mean, specifically focused on downtown.
Well, we could start with that and start expanding it
Yeah.
outside of that. But how does everybody feel with just starting with downtown, identifying
And then-
properties?
Yeah.
I think that makes a
want it
lot of
visible.
sense.
It's important. for
And there's a
public to-
density, so even if you only had 2 projects, someone could walk from one to the next and you start getting that
Mhm.
sense of connection.
Does downtown include Neola Park?
If you were to make it the DRI boundary, then yes, it would.
Okay, let's make it a DRI.
Yeah.
So this says does not include, or does not constitute a sign.
I was wondering about that too.
Well, yeah, because like, for instance, we have several old faded signage around town. So if someone is coming to refurbish one of the, like, there's an old Coca-Cola sign and there's funds for restoring old Coca-Cola signs.
Is that a historical society question?
Well, I guess my question is we also have there's also the one for the farmer's market. It's very muralistic, I guess.
The
It
vinyl
says,
sign they have hung up on the fence.
no, the one that's on top of that, on the Ross building.
Oh, right.
So like, it's a sign, but it's also a mural. Like, what is the, it's advertising a thing, but it doesn't have a date, it doesn't have a price, it doesn't have any of that stuff.
Apparently
So
there's,
like, where's the line?
I would leave it,
there is a sign regulations and zoning code of the city of Oneonta that's referred to here, so there must be a definition.
yeah, I would leave, and I think for this purpose, that the commission should feel free to define what the difference is between a commercial sign and an artistic sign.
One of the things that.
And there may be some gray area in between there. It may not be a clear definition, but go for it. Just say, we interpret this as being, a standard commercial sign that just serves the purpose of selling things, as opposed to a sign that has artistic value. And if the council challenges you on that, well, then fine, they challenge you on that. But I would just say, go for it.
There were two things that made me think when I was reading it, and that's why when you brought it up, I thought that it stuck with me. One is that there are public art programs in other cities that I've seen where people make proposals to take over a billboard in a city. And so it's a temporary thing done by a visual artist where they propose something to go on a billboard in town. And so, part of me is thinking, I don't think that's really a sign because I don't think it's got commercial intent, but it's on a billboard, or it might be on an LED billboard. Even we could have a video proposal on an LED billboard in town. And then the other thing, the sort of flip side of that, because that's using commercial infrastructure for sort of fine art purposes. The flip side is you see also in a lot of cities, there are companies that hire people to make sort of art that is also an advertisement. So Pabst Blue Ribbon is commonly doing this, where in different cities they hire a graffiti artist to do a graffiti mural, as long as they put a Pabst Blue Ribbon can in there somewhere. And so I guess my question there would be like, are we open to that kind of thing, or are we saying no to that sort of thing? Are we open to using commercial infrastructure as a place for fine art?
I don't know if there's any easy answers or any.
I don't expect one right now. I'm just bringing it up.
Delineation of sign that's commercial and sign. I would say, as a group, come up with the definition that works, that in your view makes sense in terms of respecting the artistic intent, of whatever it is, as opposed to it being purely commercial, and create your own definition. Look, the worst that happens is that you get challenged on it. But it's not clear. People who wrote this were not experts in this necessarily, could not foresee all of the things that would happen. You folks are being asked to be the experts. Define it yourself. And the worst that case happens is somebody argues with you. I'm used to that. I deal with it every day.
Sure.
That's what you have to do.
And it may be we have to define any project that we put out there. So
I'm sure.
we may be like, every time we have come up with a new project, is coming up with a new definition of what that project is, and make it so it's palatable for city council to approve.
It occurs to me, I'm thinking to what I said before about like just optics or something. The DRI had tons of money for signage for businesses in town, right?
Yes.
And so it might look bad if someone is doing something that could ostensibly be a sign for their business that's coming from this other fund when there was already a fund for that, right? So I think that's a reason to
The intent is
keep it.
not to use this to put up commercial signs for business.
Which is where, well, I agree with Ian that the farmer's market sign is sort of mural-like. I could imagine a lot of grumbling if they got money from the art fund to make a new mural sign if they hadn't applied to the DRI fund that was dedicated to
Yeah.
it.
You know, at what point does that sign become art? I'll leave that up to you to define and figure out.
Well, I've sent everybody a link for the city code on signage. And I've also sent you links for other cities' public art commissions, as well as a public artist handbook. I think the best one is the Americans for the Arts, that is, says a new resource for public art planning in rural communities. But that may be a good stepping off point for developing our own master plan. A little bit of, and this is just 2 pages of Googling stuff, and I came up with like 4 links and a document to send out. So maybe we should start like immersing ourselves in what other cities are doing. Maybe some of those answers will be there. And if not, we'll be better informed for creating answers for questions that we may not even think of.
And also what other cities are doing in terms of like their mural tours and their
Right.
mosaic tours, just so we can get some inspiration about.
Also, so as
That's
far, as I was suggesting before, we can serve as a meta committee too, where we ask the public, what kind of projects would you like us to undertake? Where they're a subcommittee, they don't come up with the actual ideas, but they come up with an idea for what they want. Say, we want a statue of so-and-so downtown, and we're like the Amy Smith advocates of Oneonta. And we want this statue put up, right? And then we're the final clearinghouse. So we're not the only ones that are coming up with ideas for what the city of Oneonta and the immediately surrounding area, what it needs, like a walking tour or whatever. The public at large should have some input in that as well. And at that point, we serve as a meta committee. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I manage the Leaf Art and Poetry Contest, which has probably 60 or 70 local artists on a Facebook page. So it would be really easy to put up a Facebook page and have people put their artwork up and ideas for locations and installations and things that, I think once we get a master plan or even an inkling of one, we could start promoting the fact that we exist and let the community know, the arts community know, that we're open for suggestions about where to put art in the city of Oneonta and what they'd like to see. Anybody, not just artists. It could be a really fun thing to explore with the entire community.
Right, there might be people who really want some, some sort of recognition of the founding, I'm not gonna say fathers, because that's gender specific. What do I say? Parents? The founding parents of Oneonta, right? So there might be some group that's, that really wants something like that done, but they don't know how it would work. So we're not asking for specific ideas. We're asking for general ideas.
Right.
I think we should also, we're talking about permanent, semi-permanent, annual and short-term spaces of art. I think we should all sort of think about what our priorities are for each. I think the longer or the more permanent that the art is supposed to be, the more we should focus on sort of its interactivity in a way. I think of things like, I was up at Lake George and they have a mystery spot right in the middle of downtown, and there's no signs for it, but like you can hear about it and look for it, and you go and stand this thing, and it sounds weird, like it just looks like a plaza. And I don't know how it works, but I think it has something to do with the metal they laid out. Like it's something that
Draws.
it makes it a destination as opposed to not something just to look at,
Right.
but to experience it. They had a big kind of square sculpture in St. Mark's in New York, and it wasn't just a sculpture. You could go up and you could actually turn it.
Right.
It's like things that people can interact with and lay their hands on, or get their pictures taken in front of. It's like I've been to the boardwalks in Jersey, and there's like a giant bird, but everyone stands in front of it, so it looks like they have wings. It's like people like that stuff. So, as we're thinking about what we're going to have, that I think thinking about aspects like that will be really key to what our
I love
final
that
decision.
kind of artwork. My favorite art installation of all time was a bunch of gigantic, like wooden rocking chairs that had kinetic sculpture on the top, and as people sat in them and rocked, they played music, and it was like an orchestra of people just with smiles on their faces, playing music and whirling all these whirly gigs on top of the chairs. They were beautiful, but I don't know who did them.
I'm thinking of two things. The Albany Airport always has art, and they have a process for applying to have your art shown. That'd be interesting to look at their process. That's online. And then this new thing opened in New York City, Little Island. Has anyone visited this?
Yeah, I've read about it.
It's very, very cool. And when you mentioned the music, because as you walk around this little island, which is man-made, there's several musical instruments.
Oh, I saw that.
And it's, very breezy. You're out on the water, and it's beautiful. And the children just love it. They just gravitate toward the musical instruments. So, but looking at both of those things too, that might help us to formulate a plan.
We could create Oz, the Emerald City. It could be so beautiful. We have all the ingredients.
These are all great ideas. We're meeting the second Wednesday.
Second Wednesday of the
So
month.
everyone has on their schedule for the 6th of October. Or no, I'm sorry. Second Wednesday will be the 13th.
Can you email that out to us when you send us the links?
So just, just for nuts and bolts of operations, you do have to have a quorum in order to do anything, which will always be 4 people. And when you come down to voting on something, it's 4 people, no matter how many are present. It's not a majority of how many are present. It's a majority of the full body, which will always be 7. Even if there are vacancies, it'll be 7. So approving anything will always require 4 people at all times. All of your meetings will be open to the public. Public are invited to attend all the board commission meetings. Actually, hopefully by next time you meet, you'll have nameplates, so you don't have other people's names in front of you. It is your option as to whether, if and when the public comes to sit in on your meetings. There is no requirement that you allow them to participate. That is basically the chair's option. You can allow them to participate in your meeting. You can allow them to comment. Or you can say, that you're just here to observe. That is completely your option. And usually that falls to the chair. The chair runs the meeting and would call upon people from the public if they want to speak, or it doesn't have to. The minutes are taken of all of your meetings. Those minutes wind up on the city website. You'll, of course, get copies of them and approve them the following time you meet. but they all become public. Your minutes, they'll live on the city website and will be available to people. There'll be a liaison, as I mentioned, from the council who will attend your meetings, who will report back at the next council meeting with a brief summation of what you spoke about or any business that took place. If there are questions that council members have or comments, he or she will bring them back to you at the next meeting. And the liaison's job is really just to facilitate communication between the council and the commission. It's not in any way to run your meetings. It's not to have a say in what you do. It's not even to participate. It's really just to facilitate communication. Carrie, what else am I not thinking of?
I think that's about it.
Currently, everything is in flux with COVID. The state legislature just approved last week, once again relaxing the open meeting laws so that we can do meetings remotely. We are still conducting our meetings in person here at City Hall, but we can operate remotely, so somebody can be home or wherever and Zoom in. You can even, if there's a vote taking place, that can be done. Typically, that's not permitted. It is permitted now. Whether that'll be permitted forever or not, or just up until post-COVID, if there ever is a post-COVID world, we'll wait and see. But for right now, the open meeting laws are suspended and we can operate via Zoom. That means that you can even meet completely by Zoom if you didn't want to meet in public. But that's up for you to determine. All of our meetings are happening still in public here in City Hall. Of course, everything's subject to change. Nobody knows what it'll be in a month from now. So we just continue to monitor the process and move forward. The masks are required at all times in the city buildings at this time. So, we just appreciate people respecting that, visitors as well. The public comes into view. Right now, masks are required. I can't think of anything else. Am I missing anything? Questions that you have over the general operation? I'm sure things will come up. I'm sure that, along the way, there'll be, struggles and, trying to figure it out. It's a brand new thing. I'm sure I'm confident that we'll get there. I have every confidence that we'll come up with something very worthwhile and something good. And maybe there may be frustrations along the way. There always are in getting there. The path is never that simple and easy, but I'm sure we'll get there. And you have my full support. I'm excited about this. I think it's a great step forward for the city. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the results that come out of this.
Anything else?
Yeah.
Well,
Motion adjourned?
one thing,
Second.
I would
Oh,
really like to
sorry.
have the Festival of Lights is so exciting, coming up, and I would like to have us kind of be a small part of getting student artwork into Neoliberal Park for that, a chicken wire challenge, or, just it would be fun if we kind of had a little tiny bit of promotion out of that for getting some, because that is public art, really. Light up fish, or light up, there's a gazillion things you can do with illuminated artwork in the park really easily, cheaply, with a contest. So put that out there. We could help organize it a little bit. First night I'll mainly organize.
We good? Your motion to adjourn?
Second.
There's one, there's two. Everybody okay with that?
Yep.
Say aye.
Oh, it's fine.
Aye.
Great. Great. So you got a little homework to do. See you next